everybody, welcome to this week's episode on Diversity with Diana podcast series, the podcast that discusses inclusive diversity, tech innovation, and good governance in Africa. Now this week I want to look at an element that I haven't looked at before, and I haven't discussed it with you guys who come in every week to learn about diversity, its elements, and how you can participate in it to become a better human being. Cultural diversity. Cultural diversity simply means diversity is embodied in the uniqueness and plurality of the identities of the groups of people and societies making up of humankind. Now, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, that is UNESCO, proposes in its articles that cultural diversity is as important to humankind as biodiversity is to nature. There is limitations to some things in this life. For example, the freedom of expression that we have. For example, me using this podcast to broadcast my ideas to the public. There's a limit to which I can exercise my freedom. The same applies to cultural diversity. In fact, the position is rejected by some member organizations of the United Nations on several grounds. Some of the cultural practices are recognized by the United Nations from member countries as being unethical. And these ones include female genital mutilation, early child marriages, child abuse, and human sacrifice. So you can imagine that we all have different cultural beliefs and different cultural backgrounds, but there's a limit into which we can exercise them even in the modern day and age. But that is not to say that diversity or cultural diversity is not encouraged. It is highly encouraged to humankind. Some of the most known elements of cultural diversity include language differences, dressing differences, and traditions. They are not the only key features for cultural diversity, but they are the ones that are most known. A professor in the University of Wales called David Crystal in the 1990s conducted a research, and in it he projected that in the year 2100 onwards, 2100 languages will become extinct due to globalization and cultural integration. Now, it is not entirely a bad thing, but it is something that we must be conscious about, where we must be cognizant about our cultural practices that we wish to preserve in order to be able to inform our future generations about what our cultures entailed, what we practiced, and what we did. As Africans, what are those cultural elements that we need to hold on to so that in the wake of constant globalization, fueled by the penetration of internet, technology, and innovation, that we now speak a common language, that we now have similar beliefs, that we now speak the same language and sing to the same tunes. How do we preserve those positive elements in our culture that distinctly make the world a colorful place to be? So in our discussions, we hope to propose that being different from other people is not a bad thing. Being different from others could actually bring forth the kind of competitive advantage that corporates seek for. When you have students from Africa studying in Asia and coming back while holding on to those positive cultural elements that they have learned during their period there, then you have others going to the West and they come back home and exercise their duties in trade, in private sector, in government, in their negotiation discussions, while holding on to the positive elements, cultural elements that they have learned from elsewhere, while integrating it with theirs. That makes corporates, they make governments perform better in the competitive world. Economies will grow when we better learn how to live with each other, when we respect other people's differences. In fact, one of the key tenets of diversity advocates is to ensure that there's respect beyond inclusion. There's respect for different cultures, for different genders, for people who hold different beliefs from what we hold as ourselves. Therefore, institutions are consistently being encouraged to actually have policies that accommodate different cultures and different ways of thinking, different practices, and just differentness. Knowing that the consumers out there, the customers, even when your government, the people that you serve are diverse in nature. Therefore, policies that you hold within your institutions and within the corridors of power that you have over the people have to also have diverse elements in it. Which is why one of our pleas as a society or as a group in Kenya is that we seek to push forth the agenda of passing the two-third gender bill. This is just a gender bill that ensures that at no given point in time in any public institution, whether in the leadership position or any other position, that there must be a gender representation. So it is an ongoing discussion, not to delve away from what we were talking about, cultural diversity. Later we will discuss about gender diversity. But in essence, that's what we mean. That's what as inclusive advocates, inclusive diversity advocates in Kenya, we do have a Facebook group. We propose that diversity is something that needs to be celebrated, that it is something that needs to be harnessed, that it is something that needs to be encouraged so that we can be able to see competitive advantage going up, that we can see performance in our public institutions, in our private institutions, in our school systems, in academia, in churches even, that there's no single place that we must have a dominance of one gender or a dominance of one culture. In fact, one of the things that I like when I see in the Kenyan society is that we see continually that there's a merging and there's a coming together of different religious groups when they're coming together to make a common voice towards government when it comes to policy making processes. So I know about interdenominational unions, and to me that's an element, a positive element of cultural diversity. So yes, while the UNESCO out there is saying that cultural diversity is as important to humankind as biodiversity is to nature, I am here to say yes, that is indeed accurate, and yes, there's limitations or an extent to which cultural diversity is agreed. I mean, you can imagine about a culture that proposes for human sacrifice. That is a no. A culture that proposes for child marriages. That is just a no for sure. A culture that actually pushes forth their agenda, and this is the agenda for female genital mutilation. Again, that is a violation of human dignity and human rights for the human body. Polygamy is also arguably one of the cultural elements that the UNESCO is actually saying no to. So polygamy, again, is one of the cultural diversity elements that the UNESCO is not okay with, but some highly contested again by different people and different societies. So looking forward to reading your comments. I grow, the podcast grows better when we get to hear from you. And just to tell you guys, I think this is the episode which I'm going to be informing you that we're going now to start having guests coming into the podcast. We'll be having discussions at least twice a month to push forth the agenda. Yes, I started this as a solo podcast, but then we have reached the level where we feel that we are comfortable enough and confident enough to have guests come and join us in critical discussions so that then we can become. So thank you very much for always staying tuned. Thank you for your comments. We are because you are. So thank you very much and stay tuned. Watch more episodes on the channel. I know many of you are new subscribers, so please go back and see what we've done in the past and see where we are at now, and looking forward to having you even more. Thank you very much. Have a lovely morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Bye.